Everyone keeps telling you that if he is not reaching out, it automatically means he does not care. But the reality is far more complicated than that. A man's silence is often much deeper and emotionally layered than most people understand. And if you never learn what silence actually means, you will keep misunderstanding the situation again and again. After years of hearing women ask the same painful questions, why he stopped calling, why he takes hours or even days to respond, why he disappears without offering any explanation, I realized something that completely shifted the way I viewed relationships. The problem was never that women failed to notice the signs. The real problem is that most women were conditioned from the beginning to interpret male silence in the wrong way. From a very young age, many women were taught that if a man truly wants you, he will constantly pursue you. They were taught that love should always look like non-stop communication. They were told that if he genuinely cared, he would text every single day without exception. And those beliefs created a dangerous emotional pattern where every moment of silence feels like rejection, every pause feels like abandonment, and every unread message feels like proof that something is going wrong. But today that confusion ends, because a man's silence is not random chaos, and it is not some impossible mystery either. Silence communicates something. It reflects what is happening inside him, emotionally, mentally, and psychologically. And by the end of this, you will understand exactly how to respond when he goes quiet, without losing your peace, your confidence, or your sense of self. Before you say you already understand this, ask yourself something honestly. The last time he disappeared for 2 days without messaging you, did your energy remain calm? Did you avoid checking your phone every few minutes, hoping his name would suddenly appear? Did you stop yourself from imagining painful stories in your head about what he might be doing or who he might be with? If the answer is no, then this message is meant for you. Because as Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes incredibly powerful. Stoicism is not about becoming emotionally cold or shutting down your feelings. It is about learning how to stay emotionally grounded while life around you continues changing unpredictably. This may be uncomfortable to hear, but sometimes silence becomes an unconscious way for a man to observe your reaction when he pulls away. Not every man does this intentionally. Some are not even aware that they are doing it, but it still happens constantly. And what hurts the most is how often it works. Have you ever caught yourself sending casual messages after he has been silent for several days? You ask things like, "Are you okay?" or "Haven't heard from you." You try to sound relaxed while secretly feeling anxious inside. You begin explaining why you did not text first. You start defending your own behavior even though nobody asked you to. And if you have done this, understand something carefully. He is learning how emotionally affected you become by his absence. He is noticing how much control his attention has over your emotional state. And this is the painful truth. Some of the strongest women completely lose their emotional balance when it comes to interpreting silence from someone they deeply care about. Women who successfully run businesses, raise families, survive heartbreak, carry enormous responsibilities, and overcome impossible situations suddenly feel powerless simply because one man did not respond to a message. Some men intentionally distance themselves to see whether you will chase them. Others do it unconsciously because they want reassurance of their importance in your life. Either way, your reaction reveals far more than your words ever will. If your emotional stability collapses every time he pulls away, then your reaction silently teaches him how much influence he has over you. What almost nobody talks about is this. Every time you panic because of his silence, every time your mood changes because he is absent, every time your entire emotional state becomes dependent on whether he reaches out, you slowly give away your power. You teach him that he can emotionally affect you without even being present. And that becomes dangerous because real power has never come from controlling another person. Real power comes from mastering yourself. Stoicism teaches that your value is not determined by who texts you, calls you, or gives you attention. Your value is revealed by how deeply centered you remain when they do not. A woman who continues living fully when he goes quiet carries a completely different energy. A woman who keeps building her life, pursuing her goals, maintaining her peace, nurturing her friendships, and protecting her emotional balance even when he disappears, carries a strength that cannot easily be manipulated. Do you know what happens when a woman no longer reacts emotionally to silence? Eventually, when he returns, and many times he does not find someone frozen in place desperately waiting for his attention. He finds someone who kept evolving, someone who continued moving forward, someone who remained connected to her own purpose. And trust me, he notices that immediately. Because there is something unforgettable about a woman who refuses to abandon herself simply because someone else became distant. Have you ever experienced that strange contradiction where you try so hard not to appear needy exactly at the moment you need reassurance the most? That inner conflict is where so many people lose themselves emotionally. They pretend to be detached while internally falling apart. But freedom begins the moment you stop abandoning your own emotional needs simply to appear desirable. Now here comes another truth that may sting at first, but will eventually set you free. Sometimes his silence genuinely has nothing to do with you. It is not always punishment, manipulation, or lack of interest. Sometimes he is simply consumed by his own life. His ambitions, work stress, financial pressure, family responsibilities, personal struggles, distractions, or emotional confusion absorb his attention completely. Many men naturally compartmentalize life differently than women do. They can become deeply focused on one area while unintentionally neglecting another. A man may care about you deeply and still disappear mentally into his own world for a period of time. And yes, this can feel incredibly frustrating, especially when you consistently make time for him, especially when you think about him throughout your day, emotionally check on him, and prioritize maintaining the connection while he seems emotionally absent. But here is the perspective shift that changes everything. His silence can become an opportunity instead of a wound. It can become an invitation to redirect your focus back toward yourself. Life is essentially telling you that while he is focused on building his world, you should focus on building yours. Think about it honestly. When was the last time you spent several days genuinely focused on your own life without constantly wondering whether he texted you? When was the last time your goals, passions, routines, creativity, or personal growth became so exciting that checking your phone was no longer the center of your emotional world? When was the last time you woke up feeling energized about your own future instead of emotionally waiting for someone else to choose you? These questions feel uncomfortable because they expose something many people avoid admitting. Sometimes we become so emotionally focused on another person that we slowly disconnect from ourselves. We stop pouring energy into our own growth because all our emotional attention becomes attached to whether someone else is moving toward us or away from us. And this creates emotional dependency without us even realizing it. You begin measuring your worth through their consistency. You begin measuring your peace through their attention. And without noticing, your emotional state starts living in someone else's hands. But the moment you reclaim your focus, everything changes internally. You stop seeing silence as proof that you are unworthy. You stop treating delayed replies like evidence that you are losing someone. You stop interpreting every pause as a personal rejection. Instead, you begin understanding something much deeper. People's behavior often reflects their internal world far more than it reflects your value. This is why emotionally grounded people move differently. When someone becomes distant, they do not instantly collapse emotionally. They observe. They remain calm. They continue living their lives. They do not rush to force clarity through panic. They do not chase reassurance at the cost of their dignity. And most importantly, they do not abandon themselves in the process of trying to hold on to someone else. That does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become cold, unavailable, or emotionally guarded. It simply means you stop making another person the center of your emotional stability. You begin understanding that love should add to your life, not consume your identity. Healthy connection should inspire peace, not constant anxiety. And if someone's silence destroys your emotional balance every single time, then the issue is no longer just their silence. The issue becomes the emotional dependency attached to it. And here is something most people never realize until much later. The more emotionally stable you become, the more clearly you see people's behavior. Anxiety distorts perception. Fear creates stories that often are not true. When you are emotionally overwhelmed, you start overanalyzing everything. A delayed message becomes rejection. A short reply becomes loss of interest. A quiet day becomes evidence that the relationship is falling apart. But when your mind is calm, you stop creating emotional catastrophes out of temporary silence. You start recognizing patterns more clearly. You notice whether someone consistently shows effort over time instead of obsessing over one moment of distance. You stop chasing mixed signals because your self-worth is no longer starving for validation. And ironically, this calm energy often changes the entire dynamic because emotionally grounded people naturally command more respect. There is something deeply attractive about someone who remains emotionally secure without needing constant reassurance. Not because they are pretending not to care, but because they genuinely understand their own value beyond external attention. And this is the lesson most people spend years learning the hard way. Your peace is too valuable to place entirely in another person's hands. If someone wants to communicate with you consistently, they will. If they value the connection, their actions will eventually reveal it. But your job is not to force clarity through desperation or emotional panic. Your job is to remain connected to yourself regardless of what another person chooses to do. Because the strongest position you can ever stand in emotionally is not chasing, controlling, or overanalyzing another person. It is being so deeply rooted within yourself that someone else's temporary silence no longer has the power to shake your entire world. Too much emotional joy has been placed into another person's hands. Far too many people unknowingly build their emotional well-being around outside validation instead of inner fulfillment and self-connection. But you were never designed to revolve around another human being. You were never meant to orbit around somebody else's attention or approval. You are your own universe. You carry your own purpose, your own dreams, your own direction, your own calling, and your own experiences waiting to unfold in life. There are still goals you have not yet accomplished, memories you have not yet created, places you have not yet explored, and hidden parts of yourself you still have not fully discovered. While he is deeply absorbed in his own world, continue building yours. While he stays silent, reconnect with your own voice and your own peace. While he creates emotional distance, move closer toward yourself emotionally and spiritually. And something remarkable begins to happen when you truly start doing this. Not pretending to be confident, not performing strength for attention, but genuinely reconnecting with your own life and identity. Eventually, when he comes back, he no longer finds the same woman anxiously staring at her phone, waiting for validation. He encounters someone filled with purpose, someone focused on growth, someone emotionally grounded, someone with stories to share, goals in progress, experiences unfolding, and a life that feels meaningful, whether he is present or not. He encounters a woman who did not stop living simply because he became quiet. A woman who refused to place her happiness on hold, waiting for his attention or approval. A woman who understands that love should add beauty to her life, not become the center of her emotional survival. And believe me, that energy feels entirely different. There is a huge emotional difference between a woman who genuinely enjoys her own life and a woman who depends completely on external validation to feel worthy. One radiates calmness and peace. The other radiates fear, anxiety, and emotional dependence. One naturally attracts because she already feels emotionally fulfilled within herself. The other constantly searches for reassurance because deep inside she secretly feels incomplete when alone. Men sense this difference immediately, even if they cannot fully explain it in words. Energy always communicates before words do. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming silence automatically means rejection. Sometimes silence is confusion. Sometimes it is emotional exhaustion. Sometimes it is fear, distraction, pressure, or immaturity. And yes, sometimes silence truly is disinterest. But your real power begins the moment you stop allowing another person's silence to define your worth and value. The moment you stop interpreting every delayed text message as evidence that you are not enough, your emotional world begins changing completely. Because the truth is simple. If somebody truly wants to leave, desperation will never force them to stay. And if somebody genuinely values you, your calmness and emotional stability will never drive them away. Chasing rarely creates genuine love. Most of the time, it only creates emotional imbalance and inner exhaustion. The more you abandon yourself trying to hold on to somebody else, the more disconnected you become from your own center and identity. And the moment you reconnect with yourself again, everything begins shifting. Your standards rise naturally. Your emotional stability becomes stronger. Your relationships become healthier because they are no longer built on fear, anxiety, or desperation. A man's silence should never become permission for you to lose yourself emotionally. It should never become the reason you stop sleeping peacefully, stop focusing on your goals, stop enjoying your life, or stop recognizing your own value. Somebody else's inconsistency should never create chaos inside your spirit. The strongest thing you can do is remain deeply rooted within yourself while life unfolds naturally around you. Because at the end of the day, your peace is more valuable than temporary attention. Your emotional stability matters more than chasing validation from somebody who is uncertain. And the woman who truly understands her worth does not collapse in silence. She remains centered inside it. Now we reach the part most people avoid confronting, but it must be faced honestly and courageously. Yes, Sometimes silence truly is disinterest. It hurts, but it is real. And the sooner you stop resisting that truth, the sooner you free yourself from illusions that slowly drain your peace, confidence, and emotional energy. After years of watching women hold on to men who clearly invest little effort, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The deepest suffering rarely comes from losing somebody. It comes from attachment. Attachment to fantasy. Attachment to potential. Attachment to the imagined version of the relationship that exists only in your mind instead of the reality standing directly in front of you. Do you know the difference between a woman who spends years hurting over a man who never truly valued her, and a woman who heals quickly and moves forward with strength? The second woman understands something deeply powerful. If he walks away, then life is creating room for something healthier and better aligned for her future. She does not spend months trying to convince someone to see her worth. She does not emotionally exhaust herself begging for attention, chasing affection, or trying endlessly to prove she deserves basic love, care, and respect.